Ripple's Brad Garlinghouse was recently on CNN's First Move with Julia Chatterley to discuss Ripple, XRP, bank partnerships, Bitcoin, Libra, and everything in between. It's a fascinating interview. We've got the full interview and my reaction to several things that Brad Garlinghouse said after this. Hey guys, welcome to BitBoy Crypto, your one-stop shop for all things Bitcoin and cryptocurrency related. We are going to be taking a look at the full interview here from Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse on CNN. I'm going to be giving you my thoughts throughout. I do want to say a special thank you to Chad Alexander. He's the guy who put this full interview on his channel, and so you guys can go check him out. But here's the thing. It's not a super high-quality interview. This is recorded from the TV. But this is the only place I could find the full interview. So definitely, let's go ahead, let's start it, and see what I think.
A week of Crypto Crazy, we've been looking at ways cryptocurrencies can be a force for positive change. One example is Ripple. It's a platform used to make international monetary transactions faster and cheaper. Now, one way Ripple facilitates that is by using the cryptocurrency XRP. I asked CEO Brad Garlinghouse to explain what XRP actually is and how it all works. Listen in.
So before we actually get into what Brad's going to say in response to that, I would like to say it seems like Julia Chatterley has done her homework, and I think she was probably on crypto Twitter because it seems like she got a lot of feedback from users on Twitter about some of the different things they'll talk about. So this isn't some person that just has no idea what she's talking about. A lot of these questions you'll see throughout are very good. So here goes Brad Garlinghouse.
XRP is like a Bitcoin. It's a digital asset. It's today the third most valuable digital asset.
So I think the first thing to point out with this interview is he says it's like Bitcoin. So he does immediately compare XRP to Bitcoin. But if you really pay attention to what he says, he's really just saying it belongs in the digital asset class. So he's not really saying that XRP and Bitcoin are the same, but they belong in the same class because, hey, they're in the crypto markets.
And what we do is we take a transaction between banks, and instead of having a bank pre-fund an account at the other bank, which is how correspondent banking works today, the Bank of Brad in dollars would pre-fund the Bank of Julia, perhaps in pounds, and then I would debit and credit that. But that means I have to pre-fund and have dormant capital sitting at that other bank. What we allow banks to do, we allow payment providers to do, is to tap into the liquidity of XRP liquidity. So today there's lots of liquidity between XRP and US dollar. There's lots of liquidity between XRP and British pound. And you can tap into that to move value in real time, in seconds. And even compared to Bitcoin, which takes up to 12 minutes to complete one transaction, XRP is extremely fast at about 3 seconds per transaction.
Now, the thing I want to point out about this, okay, is that it shows here the average Bitcoin transactions 10 minutes on this graphic. He said 12. The average XRP transaction about 5 seconds. Now, you may be saying to yourself, you know what? Bitcoin is still pretty quick. It's quicker than what we see where the average amount of time for a Swift transaction is days up to weeks. With XRP, it's 5 seconds. Bitcoin is still 10 minutes, so much faster. But here's my thought on this. The fact is that right now, it seems like that's a long time, okay? But in the future, it's going to seem like an eternity. And but think of the beginnings of the internet. When you first were able to get on a browser and click on something and download a photo, and the photo would download in lines, basically, because it was taking so long, you would be happy if you download a picture in 30 seconds. But would you be happy with that now? No, you want it now. If you're on a computer and you click something and it does not immediately do what you're asking it to do, you get angry, you get frustrated. I think that's the future of money. So I do think that the difference between 5 seconds and 10 minutes is absolutely gigantic. However, I think eventually 1 second is probably what we'll be aiming for. So keep that in mind when you think about, these transaction times. The way we've been transferring money is definitely going to be archaic in the future, that it takes days. So I think getting it faster is a big deal.
That has meant XRP is extremely scalable in contrast to how Bitcoin works.
So it basically goes, Bank Brad has dollars, dollars get transferred to XRP, then XRP is transferred to sterling, and sterling then hits Bank Julia. That's how it works.
That's exactly right. And so from a consumer point of view and how we're working with, for example, a MoneyGram, the consumer itself doesn't actually see that it's flowing through XRP to solve their problem. What the consumer sees is simply a better product at a better price. That's good for MoneyGram, that's good for MoneyGram's customers. And so we're seeing more momentum than we've ever had around using XRP to move this liquidity around the world. And so we couldn't really be happier about how that has played out in a world where there's still a lot, I think, of FUD, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of doubt about what's going on in crypto. This is a real use case solving a real problem for real customers.
What do you guys think about his eyebrow when he talks? He goes, He looks like The Rock. Anyways.
Okay, so which banks right now are actually using Ripple?
It's interesting.
We have signed up about over 200 banks around the world. Some of those banks just use our software to do that debit and credit, fiat to fiat, and some of them are using XRP in those flows. We have banks like Santander that we've been working with for years and are moving lots of volume through the Ripple's technology. And then, as I mentioned earlier, payment providers like MoneyGram or RIA or Asimov that are using XRP actually to move that liquidity and really reducing their costs and improving the product.
Just in terms of the transactions, though, that you're seeing using Ripple, what proportion of those actually use XRP versus direct? And just where do you see that ratio going? I'm just trying to get a sense of sort of how much XRP itself is actually used as part of the Ripple platform.
So I would say the order of magnitude, when you think about it, is similar to the proportion of customers. So if we've got, I don't know, a couple hundred customers we have launched, 10 to 15 of them we've talked about using XRP. I would use that ratio as the total ratio between what's happening with Ripple's technology overall.
Okay, so what he says here is very interesting. Basically, out of the 200 banks. Now, also earlier what he said he started to say about 200 banks, and then he said over 200 banks. So that makes me think that the number is right at 200. It's probably 202, 203, somewhere around there. As he was talking, he caught himself and he wanted to make it sound bigger, which, I mean, hey, that's that's what she said. But I mean, that's what a good marketing or a good CEO person is going to do. So, he says over 200, so it's probably somewhere in the 200 to 210 range. I would guess. I don't have anything to back that up other than the way that he said it. But out of that number, how many are actually using XRP? He says, well, out of a couple hundred banks, once again implying 200, about 10 to 15 we've talked to about using XRP. So that means the actual number could be less than 10 to 15 out of those banks. Now, if it's a bank that's got a lot of transactions and is a national bank, then that could still be, if at least one of them fits that description, it could still be a lot. But, he's very conservative in what he's saying here with these partnerships with the bank. So, that's not that many out of 200. So what does this mean? This means that many of the banks are working with Ripple itself. They're still settling in fiat, though. They're using XCurrent or maybe XRapid. I think only XCurrent, because I think XRapid, you have to use XRP. Someone from the community can correct that if I'm wrong. But, basically they're using technology and software from Ripple, but they're not using XRP. Now, we will see that number grow, I'm sure. We will see more of those banks eventually move over to XRP, especially as cryptocurrency starts to move on. But I thought that was a very interesting, thing that Brad said.
Hello. Okay, institutions using Ripple can choose whether to use the cryptocurrency XRP. Some do, some don't, as you just heard there. XRP, like Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, has been volatile. I asked Brad if the message to investors is don't use XRP to speculate.
People are going to speculate on different asset classes. People speculate on gold, currencies. You name it, people are going to speculate. When we think about this, and what I've said very publicly is I think the long-term value of any digital asset is going to be derived from the utility it delivers. There is a lot of hype in the crypto market space. We've seen that even recently. A lot of attention around what's going on with Libra and Facebook's announcement around Libra. Today, that's just a white paper. It actually isn't. It isn't live. It hasn't launched. And so I think that the hype often gets ahead of reality in many technologies. And I think that's true in the crypto space as well. What I would encourage any person looking at this marketplace is to really understand what is real, what is not real, and understand, is there a use case? Is there a utility? Bitcoin, I'm long Bitcoin, and Bitcoin I think has real utility around being a store of value. It's digital gold.
So this is also another interesting thing he says. I agree with him on this. I've been on record many times as saying that I believe Bitcoin is more like gold than it is like a currency. That what Jack Dorsey refers to as the currency of the internet, I don't think that we've seen it yet, or we haven't seen a front runner come to the front of the pack, because I don't believe Bitcoin is that currency. Bitcoin maximalists may kill me on that. Could it be XRP? I don't know. You guys drop your comments below and let me know. Do you think that XRP has a chance to be the currency of the internet? For me personally, I'm just not sure. So let me know, and maybe you guys can sway me on that. But it's very interesting. He says he's long on Bitcoin. So a lot of people, even people in the XRP community, you guys like to pit Bitcoin versus XRP. But you have the CEO, Brad Garlinghouse, here saying he's long on Bitcoin. He thinks Bitcoin will do well as gold, not as a currency. So very interesting comments there from him. Obviously not trying to start a battle between himself and Bitcoin.
But if a Bitcoin transaction takes on average 12 minutes to confirm and the transaction cost is over $1 per transaction, that's not going to be great for a payments solution. So around payments, we think XRP is uniquely and extremely well positioned to solve that payments problem. It's extremely fast, at about 3 seconds per transaction, and it costs about 1/1000th of a penny to actually enable that transaction. So we often make the point that where Bitcoin is very profound in solving that store of value, an XRP transaction's about 1,000 times faster and it's about 1,000 times cheaper per transaction.
I saw some Twitter traffic, one in particular, Crypto Bitlord, that's...
This is funny. This is really funny. Bitlord posted this super satirical tweet, and she's been on crypto Twitter, but she's not immersed in our culture there. So she uses Bitlord's quote here on CNN, which I just think this is absolutely hilarious. But yeah, let's check it out.
Because they say that you, the company, is dumping, that you're pushing supply out to the market. Can you explain to me the difference between XRP and Bitcoin with regards supply and with regards how much ownership Ripple itself actually has as a proportion of XRP out there at this moment?
Okay, so the first thing to understand is these are all open source technologies. When people talk about forking technologies, you have seen Bitcoin forked multiple times. You have Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin BSV, Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin Diamond, Bitcoin, I can't name them all. There's 4 or 5 forks of the Bitcoin blockchain. Bitcoin, obviously, the primary BTC has remained kind of the most notable. But in the same way, people can take XRP and open source technology, and hypothetically, they could fork that if they chose to do so. Now,
so very interesting here as well. He's basically saying, hey, does someone want to fork XRP? Now, isn't Stellar XRP fork? I believe that it is. But will we see more XRP forks in the future? It seems like he's opening up that possibility.
On the ownership piece, as is the case with Bitcoin, there's some big whales that were early in the Bitcoin community. There's one wallet that has 1 million Bitcoin in it. Nobody knows who owns it. In the XRP community, Ripple is the largest owner. And the point I have made is we are the most interested party in the success of the XRP ecosystem. We're very...
Okay, so I'm going to agree with him here in that what he's going to go on to say here, and I want you guys to pay attention to this. He's going on to say that Ripple has no reason to dump the price, has no reason to manipulate the market. The most interested party in XRP success is XRP itself. And I do like the comparison that he draws here to Bitcoin, because he says, hey, we've got a lot of Bitcoin whales out there that own so much that, he will at some point say that, we can't affect the price the same way Bitcoin whales can't affect the price. Well, we have seen Bitcoin whales affect the price. That's what a pump and dump is. We've seen those BART patterns. We know that they actually can do it. So his argument here is, what is the difference between XRP being centralized and owning most of the coins and many of the Bitcoin wallets owning such a huge amount of the supply? And I think that's a valid critique of Bitcoin more than it is a pro XRP idea. So I think that is a very important thing that he says here. Trust. You have to think of this word trust. So as he talks about the fact that Ripple is the biggest owner of XRP, and he says, hey, we are the most interested party in seeing the success of this project. He's 100% correct. And there may be only a sliver of a chance that anything could ever happen that would make Ripple itself dump the price of XRP. But who knows? What if Brad Garlinghouse were to die and someone were to take over that was like a Bond villain or something? Or maybe Brad Garlinghouse himself is a Bond villain with that eyebrow. But, there is a leap of trust that must happen between XRP owners and the Ripple, the company. Like there's a gap there of trust, even if it's very, very small, that's saying, okay, we understand that you are the most interested in making this project do well and the price go up. We want to make sure that you're going to do that. There is a gap there since they do own the most amount. Do I think that Ripple will ever dump XRP and flood the market and tank their own company? No, I don't believe that at all. And I don't think most people would believe that. But the thing we're trying to do with cryptocurrency is remove that gap. And with Ripple, that gap does still exist. Now, you can make that argument for a lot of different projects in a lot of different ways. Kind of like I said with Bitcoin, like you're trusting all of these big whales not to dump the price on you. And we see they do it. So, I don't know. This is probably the biggest critique of XRP that I hear, is that people don't like the fact that the coins are pre-mined. They don't like the fact that the nodes are centralized. They don't like the fact that XRP owns the most of the supply. Okay, those are the biggest critiques. But it's going to be a long time, if ever, that we're going to see a project that is perfect. And I think that argument with Bitcoin now being traceable, with Bitcoin, having so many whales that it almost could be centralized in a way, that I think there's critiques there as well. So I think there's critiques for both Bitcoin, XRP, and every other project. So, it is cool. I think that Brad Garlinghouse admits, like, yes, we are the biggest owners. He didn't try to dice words there. But, there is an element of trust that must be, there's a gap of trust that must be crossed here to understand that Ripple would not tank the price. But very interesting comments
on our use case and how do we solve problems with XRP. But one of the things I'm excited about is you're seeing a growing ecosystem of other players investing in other use cases around XRP. Just recently, we announced a partnership with Coil, which is doing micropayments for content. So next time you're reading a story on the Financial Times website, you hit that paywall.
I am going to be putting this video and story on Coil if you're interested in checking Coil out. It is a platform that I'm interested to see how it's going to do due to the scale of the XRP.
Hypothetically, you just pay, hey, here's a dime, here's a quarter, here's 50 cents. Where today, that's a pretty hard problem. And companies like Coil are going to use XRP for those micropayment transactions. So yes, Ripple owns a lot of XRP. We're very interested in the success of XRP. But the accusations of us dumping, that's not in our best interest to do that. We're clearly interested in a healthy, successful ecosystem. And so we would never do that. And in fact, have taken steps to lock up most of the XRP we own in escrow such that we can't touch it.
Interesting. So, but you agree that you can control the price to some degree because ultimately the Ripple community has so much power, no?
If they could control the price, I think the price would be higher than 26 or 27 cents or wherever it is exactly right now.
No, I mean, if you look at the correlations between XRP and most of the crypto market, or often called the altcoins, you see a very high degree of correlation. Ripple can't control the price of XRP any more than, the whales can control the price